fair trade, I personally, and maybe it's just my own limitation, have always thought of maybe coffee or chocolate. I've never really thought of fruit and specifically bananas. So can you help our audience and myself understand that world a little bit more?
Sure. Well, I'm glad that you think about fair trade sometimes. Some people have no idea what it is or have never heard of it and can intuitively think that it probably is something good for people in a trading relationship. But yeah, fair trade is very common in coffee and chocolate, but bananas less so. And that's a problem. That's something that we really need to address, especially in the North American market. If we were in Europe right now, that wouldn't be a problem. If you talk to
Really?
somebody about fair trade bananas in the UK, for example, over 30% of the bananas coming into the UK are fair trade certified. Switzerland is over 50%. Germany is climbing, France is climbing. So when you go to the European market and you talk about fair trade in general, it's like talking about recycling. They get it. It's been part of their culture. It's been part of their education. But in North America, we're behind. And if you've ever asked yourself for bananas, why the price seems to never change, no matter what's going on around you, no matter what's happening in the world, pandemic, inflation, economic crisis, that price of bananas seems quite stable. There's a reason for that. It doesn't just magically happen. Farmers are really subsidizing the costs of bananas because the way that retail has been built is to use bananas as a low cost item to set price perception at the store level. And
Hmm.
so Equifruit is a brand of bananas that wanted to address this issue and start offering fair trade bananas to ensure that at the beginning of the supply chain, especially, farmers are guaranteed a fair and stable income, and that what we pay them for their fruit reflects the cost of sustainable production, which is seldom the case in the banana industry. Often, if you're a banana farmer and you've been born into Guatemala or Honduras or Costa Rica or Ecuador, for example, you're kind of just stuck. You really don't have a way out, and you're probably going to end up working in a banana plantation, and whatever you get paid because it's that or nothing, and you're just stuck in this cycle of generational poverty. So fair trade certification gives farmers a way out and gives them the option and gives them the resources they need to grow their businesses.
How do you go about finding and working with those farmers?
So there are a number of farmers that are already certified by fair trade, thanks to the development around the world, especially in Europe. We have a director of operations who's based in Panama, and he's worked in fair trade bananas for 25 years. So
Wow.
thankfully, we have him in the team, and he's familiar with so many different farmers and knows what to look for from a quality perspective and for just those right partnerships at the beginning of our supply chain. So that's been really helpful for identifying the right partners. And then I would say, it's a small world, the banana industry, and word gets out there. And when you have a brand like Equifruit that is just dying to pay top dollar for your product, it's word gets out quickly. So we literally have a waiting list of farmers that are dying to sell us their bananas and other products too. We get solicited from fair trade farms all around the world on a weekly basis saying, we have fair trade star fruit and we have pineapples and we have avocados or coconut. And really for us, it's a matter of identifying partners that can take on enough volume so that we can be bringing in full truckloads and build a sustainable business model.
And
Yeah.
certainly the certification is core to the offering and to the
Mhm.
concept of what you're trying to bring to the market. For those who are less familiar, you touched on it a little bit as to what fair trade certification is, what it means, and there are also perhaps more local chapters as well as that international umbrella. Could you help us understand the nuances between those different certifications?
Mhm. So there are a number of different fair trade labels on the market. And since day one, Equifruit has chosen to work with Fair Trade International. You've probably seen them on a pint of Ben and Jerry's, or maybe if you haven't, then pay attention next time you reach for a chunky monkey, for example. You're going to see that fair trade mark. And so we choose to have Fair Trade International because it is the most rigorous standards and it's the best returns for the growers. So we figure if we're going to build our business model on being 100% fair trade, we might as well feel great about it, knowing that we are doing the most and bringing back most value to the beginning of our supply chain at the farm level. So Fairtrade International is the only certifying body that's actually 50% owned by the growers themselves. They sit at the board level and they help determine what fair trade minimum prices are and what standards should be. And I love that they're involved in that process, and they review those prices every year to make sure that we're paying a sustainable price for the product. And that's an important distinction against some other fair trade labels. And I don't bring this up because I don't want people to trust anything, but I think it's important as a consumer that if you're going to decide to look for a fair trade coffee or banana or chocolate, the rule of thumb is kind of you get what you pay for. If it has all these sustainability and fairly paid claims, but you don't see the certifications to back it up, well, somebody might be marking their own homework. So we prefer to be audited against, a third party. And Equifruit as a brand, we're certified by Fairtrade International, and we only work with farms that are fair trade certified. And that process, it involves a number of things, but to just distill it down to what's most important for the consumer to know is that if you see the fair trade mark, and fair trade is written in one word, by the way, when I'm talking about the one we have, when you see that fair trade in one word, what that means is that Equifruit had to respect the fair trade minimum price for that country and for that commodity. So whether we're buying organic bananas out of Peru versus regular fair trade bananas out of Nicaragua, there are different minimum prices that are meant to reflect the cost of sustainable production in that country. And you can imagine, just think about the cost of everything, how that's fluctuated over these last 3 years with the pandemic, with inflation, the cost of inputs, the cost of trucking and packaging and fuel. These all have huge effects on the inputs for our farms, and that price really needs to be reviewed annually. I've seen other fair trade labels where they either don't have minimum prices or it's like negotiable. It's kind of whatever year you were already paying, we'll pay you a little bit more and we'll call it a fair trade. And I don't like that. I really like to work within a framework that is clear, that the buyer, even at the retail level, can look and see what am I paying the farm's FOB. So that's the price at the farm level. And I just like that transparency. And I think out of respect for the consumer, that it's only fair that we work within that structure. Otherwise, it's just kind of greenwashing, and we're not really about greenwashing at Equifruit. We'd rather go all in and work harder to build the market, but just to do it right.
That's so important. And you mentioned the word trust. I think that is just so key for us as consumers, with all of the different namings. Like even if you just take eggs, there are 35 different kinds of certifications, quote unquote, as to what's available out there. And just understanding what that highest standard is for any consumer is so important. Is it fair to assume that because there's the higher price that, for example, environmental considerations are also woven into there? I can only imagine if I'm a farmer and I'm getting paid a fair price, I'm also being mindful as to the ecosystem where this is coming from. And I'm asking more because a lot of our listeners are coming in from that environmental lens, and just wondering if that plays into the certification as well.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll touch on environment, but I'll also touch on price too. In case people are like, oh, well, how much do fair trade bananas cost? Are they $10 a pound? The exciting thing is that fair trade bananas, Equifruit fair trade bananas, are still very affordable. We calculate that it'll cost the consumer about $10 more per year to switch to an Equifruit banana. So if you used to pay 99 cents for a regular organic banana, and then you switch to Equifruit, it's maybe about $1.29, $1.39, depends on the retailer. Each retailer has a different margin structure. Right. In the States, it's even more affordable because they're even closer and we're working in US dollars. So an American would probably be paying between $4 and $5 more per year for a fair trade banana. Like, I just went to Starbucks the other day and spent $7.85 or something for a small coffee.
It goes fast.
I couldn't believe it. I'm like, okay, when did 7 something become the price for the small, or whatever the Starbucks language is for small? I can never
Yeah.
remember. So there's that side of things, just to scratch the curiosity of your listener. But then you're asking about environmental. So I'll just go back to explain a little bit more about the fair trade structure. So
Okay.
when we have fair trade certification, as I said earlier, Equifruit is respecting these fair trade prices. We also have to pay another price called the fair trade social premium. So it's not just enough to make sure that the farm is getting, the price of the fruit reflects the cost of sustainable production. We also want to invest in building the infrastructure of the farm and their communities. So we have to pay fair trade social premium. And this is the same structure, whether you're buying fair trade coffee or tea or sugar or diamonds or gold or cotton or rice or whatever it is. Fair trade minimum price, fair trade social premium. In the case of bananas, for every 40-pound case that we buy, we also have to pay $1 US. And that $1 US, the farmers decide democratically how to reinvest that money. It has to go into projects that have environmental, social, or economic impact. So they decide this amongst themselves. We have zero influence over how that money is spent. And then there's a full audit at the end of the year so that we can see the breakdown of that cost. So on the environmental side, and our team visits our farmers every year. We do full reports. We take lots of pictures. We're very much connected to our farmers in all the countries that we work with. So Ecuador, Peru, Nicaragua, Colombia, Mexico. And there have been a bunch of cool projects like composting projects, also soil improvement projects where they're using scraps and composting from the farms themselves to create kind of these almost like a sourdough starter for the soil, to take back all those micronutrients and to put them back into the soil. Also, when bananas are growing on the plant, they have to be covered with a plastic bag. This is for organic or conventional production. And that's because it's a very hot, humid environment, lots of insects. So it's just a way to protect the fruit. So one of the things that our farmers started to do, and you see this with other farms too, is they started to reuse those bags, melt them down, and turn them into pallet support. So when the fruit is palletized, like 6x8, you have those 4 pallet supports, and those are now all recycled plastic bags. You need money to start projects like that and to have the infrastructure to be able to melt your plastic bags and turn them into pallet supports. So those are just some of the ways environmentally that you can see some impact. But we get regular updates. Our team communicates on Slack, and we get regular updates from the farms too on different things that have been done and built. And it just motivates us to block out the noise and block out any negativity and anybody that's not ready to work with us right now, and to just keep getting people pumped up about what we're trying to achieve as a brand, which we say kind of tongue-in-cheek, Global Fairtrade Banana Domination. That's like our high-level goal. We want to all die one day knowing that we made a big change in the banana industry, and that super cheap bananas are something of the past, where we can say that we pushed so hard that the industry had to listen to us, and we are affecting change so far, and it feels pretty terrific, to be honest.